Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, the story highlights the complexities of relationships and emotional struggles within a family. It revolves around a man who faces criticism from his wife and her peers, leading to marital strain. Despite enduring hardships from his past, he finds solace in his children and eventually rebuilds his life with a second wife and stepchildren. The story underscores themes of forgiveness, resilience, and the importance of familial support amid adversity. Now let's get into the story. Here's my story. First off, I want to start by saying that a woman can go through criticism for the man she's chosen to marry. Those criticisms and concerns about her husband may or may not be true. Either way, you should always be sure to remember that the man under the microscope is a human, too, and he might not like certain things about himself either, like any undesirable physical feature. And don't get me started on unwanted man emotions like aggression, anger, frustration, shame, fear, anxiety, or sadness. I know these are just normal emotions that everyone experiences, but if a man shows one or more of these too frequently, maybe he's just a person in need of help. Let me tell you what people said to my wife, which in turn made her slowly start to despise me. She started going to a women's group where they each got to talk about their feelings and how life was going at home. I was at home with our teenage kids. We were married for 17 years. My wife had never physically cheated on me up until this point, but she did have an emotional affair years ago with her stepbrother that I'd rather not talk about. I guess these women encouraged her to really let all the complaints she had about her family come to the surface. My wife knew I had a really messed up childhood. She knew I didn't know my father, and my mother was neglectful, but yet she didn't think for a second that I didn't want to frequently experience anger, frustration, shame, sadness, or fear. When we first got married, she helped me through these emotions. But after so many years, she started to lose faith in me. She started to believe the ladies in her group and the lies. My mother always told me that I was unworthy and a mistake. What she didn't realize, though, was that she was proving herself to be just that. She was so disgusted with me that she decided she deserved a one-night stand after 17 years of marriage. She was terrible at lying, though, and not very sneaky. Quickly figured out where to find her, and she got a real show of my aggression in front of all the neighboring people that could hear me through their walls. I basically attacked AP. I wanted to attack her, but for some reason, I felt like I couldn't. I spent a night in jail, but I guess AP had more of a heart than my wife because he didn't press charges. I couldn't believe she was convinced I was the one with the problems that didn't deserve to have unconditional love from her. She had some kind of obsession with her own family, and it didn't paint a pretty picture in court. Our teenagers also found out what she did, and they were disgusted. They'll always remember as a fact that their mom cheated on their dad with her own uncle. I only hope they see her as an example of what not to be. From their reaction to it, I think that's how they're going to take it. They live with me full-time and have awkward visits with their mom. I am most grateful for the fact that I was able to take custody of my kids and give them a safe place to live without the instability their mother accused me of. It's been 7 years since this happened, so our kids are in their 20s now. They've both moved out and keep in touch with both their mom and I, but they take their mother's words with a grain of salt because she once lost patience with their father, who counted on her to remain his wife and be there through the good times and the bad, for better or for worse. All things considered, I can't help but be grateful because I have more than I ever expected to have as a child. I have a big family with my adult children, second wife, and stepchildren. My wife never expected to remarry after losing her husband. But when we met, it was like fate knew we were two broken families that could combine into one. Today's second story. In this story, Opie discovers his wife's infidelity when he intercepts an invitation to her friend's bachelorette party. Confronting her at a hotel, she confesses to cheating, citing boredom in their marriage. He ends the relationship, and despite her attempts to reconcile, he remains resolute. She struggles with bitterness, while he learns to prioritize self-defense and self-worth. Now let's get into the story. My wife, 32 at the time of this story, went to college with this girl that became her best friend. They partied like wild women, so much so that it's a wonder my wife didn't flunk out of college. I, 35, met my wife on her first day at work. I was already working there for a few years before she was hired, so I was in charge of showing her the ropes. Eventually, we got married, which brings us to where the story begins. After we were married for 6 years, her crazy college friend finally got engaged. My wife was surprised her friend was even willing to settle down and perhaps invite her because she got more time as a single lady or whatever. We agreed early on as a married couple that she wouldn't remain close to this girl anymore for our relationship's sake. One night, shortly after she found out her friend was engaged, she told me she was going to spend the evening with her parents and wouldn't be back until after dinner. This wasn't totally weird, so I said that was fine. When I got home from work, I went to take out the trash and could see something like a postcard through the side of the bag. Curiosity got the better of me, so I read it through the plastic. It was an invitation to a bachelorette party that very night. It was being held in the city at a men's street club. I drove there without hesitation. I didn't want my wife looking at other men or becoming influenced to act like the party girl she grew out of. When I got there, I just started asking women around for my wife or the bride by name. Eventually, I found a woman that said they left the party a short while ago with 2 men. When I asked where they went, she hesitated to tell me. I begged and bribed her, so she gave me a hotel name. I could not believe this was happening. I started calling my wife's number over and over until I arrived in the lobby. She wouldn't answer. I asked the receptionist for their hotel room, but she wouldn't tell me. I waited for a while until I saw her come off the elevator with a man. He looked quite pleased, and so did my wife, until she looked up and saw me standing in their path. She gasped and covered her mouth, and tears started flowing uncontrollably. When AP was told I was her husband, he looked away down and grimaced. It wasn't his problem, but he didn't like being caught in the crossfire. I asked what just happened, and my wife just looked stuck. She managed to speak and say she made a bad decision to party tonight, and asked if we could go home to talk about it. I asked her again what they did, but she just stared at me. She opened her mouth, but couldn't answer me. She grabbed my hand and tried leaving the lobby. I pulled away and said I wasn't taking her back home if she just cheated on me. She couldn't function, so she sat on the lobby floor and cried. Her friend came down and was shocked at the sight. The truth came out that my wife lied and had told her friend we were separated for months. Eventually, we were sitting in my car, but before I drove anywhere, she told me she couldn't help it. She just couldn't resist having some fun with her friend. Fun that I wouldn't approve of because it wasn't moral or honoring the vows we took together. So she lied and did it anyway. She said after being married for a while, she was longing for something exciting to happen. At this point, I heard enough. I summarized for her that she felt bored and unimpressed with our relationship, so she cheated on me. Then I told her I was done and wouldn't forgive her for this. I didn't want to be married to her anymore, so she started wailing. She got out of the car after I asked a few times, and I drove away. Her brother ended up letting her stay with him and came to my house to get her stuff a week later. After a month, he was tired of having her live with him. She was miserable and couldn't bring herself to go to work or find hope in the future. She called me all the time, asking me what I was doing and begging to come over. I said no every time. I didn't want to be around her or be persuaded to let her back into my life. Women can be slippery snakes when they want to be, and after she proved herself to be like that, I couldn't take any chances. I said no repeatedly until I just stopped answering her calls. I don't plan on ever being taken advantage of again, but if this taught me anything, it's that I can't control what my spouse does. I can only trust and act in self-defense if necessary. Even though I loved her for many years, I knew I could do the same for another woman someday. It's been 2 years, and my ex still lives at her brother's house. Now they hate each other, and she's become bitter that I never forgave her for one night of fun. Despite thinking she deserved this night of fun, now she preaches on social media about how wrong partying and drinking is. Today's third story. In this story, a couple embarked on an anniversary cruise hoping for adventure. They befriend another couple but soon discover the husband's desire to swing. Rejecting the proposition, the wife secretly exchanges contact with him. Later, she's caught cheating with him on the cruise. The betrayed husbands opt to have them expelled. Despite initial distress, he proceeds with the divorce, leaving his ex-wife stranded and regretful. Now let's get into the story. I, 37, took my wife, 33, on an 11th year anniversary cruise. We worked jobs that we thought were bearable, but not exactly thrilling. So this cruise was something we both really looked forward to. I wanted us to meet other people and socialize, because why not? I wasn't sure we'd be lucky enough to meet long-term friends, but at least people to chat with. Wouldn't even know it, on the first night we met a really nice couple. The wife's name was Susie. After talking and gabbing away for a while by the bar, the four of us agreed to meet the next day as well. By the pool, the husband admits he's looking for a couple to swing with. Susie is shocked he actually brought it up and clearly doesn't agree with it. She looks sad that he wants to do such a thing. I agree with her and tell them we aren't looking to compromise our relationship. He plays it off, saying it's not like that, but I disagree. Susie was relieved, but my wife actually looked disappointed. I made a mental note to quiz her about it sometime. Susie and her husband started talking about all the adventures they went on together. My wife looked envious and continued staring at Susie's husband. I didn't know at the time, but she got his number. We both dressed up nicely, and she came with me to the casino. She was entertained for a while, but eventually she wandered off while I played poker. She told me she'd be right back, but she didn't come back even in an hour. I left the table and started looking for her and calling her over and over. Looking for her felt like a helpless waste of time because the boat was huge. What are the chances I'd run into Susie, who was also looking for her own spouse? When we saw each other, we panicked. I suggested we both go check our staterooms and meet back here with whatever we found. She agreed, and I raced back to mine, but no one was there. When I came out, I was feeling nauseous and picturing Susie walking in on them. 2 security guards passed by me just then, looking like they were on a mission. For some reason, I got hunched to follow them. They passed by where I told Susie to meet, so I waved her over. As we followed them, she said she didn't find anything, and he still wasn't answering his phone. I told her I thought these guys might be onto something. They led us straight to the comedy club, which was currently empty, but the doors were unlocked for a show in 3 hours. They called out, "Excuse me," and I jumped. Then I noticed 2 people's heads behind a bar. They were quietly swearing, and I heard my wife apologize and ask security to hold on a moment. I covered my mouth to try to hold my face together. I couldn't believe this was happening. Susie was also in disbelief. As soon as they stepped out, I could only ask my wife what the hell was happening. Susie screamed. Security just noticed we were behind them and asked if we were a couple. We clarified that we were their spouses and they were cheating, so security left their consequences up to us. They stepped aside to let us hash it out with them, but there wasn't much to say. I just stared at my wife and shook my head. I kept asking why she did this, but she just chalked it up to temptation she couldn't refuse. It hurt. I told her she wasted 11 years of our lives, but she said she didn't see it as a waste. I told her she was downplaying what she did. Our relationship was something I treasured and honored, but now it was a waste because it was over. I would have to start with someone new, someone I'd have to learn how to trust after she broke me. She started crying, but her wailing of regret didn't start until I told security that I voted for option C, which was to have her forced off the cruise ship in whatever port was next. It would be up to her to find a way home, and without me, she was going to be scared and uncomfortable. Susie bravely agreed with me, signing up her cheating spouse for the same fate. They were both yelling in protest as they were led away to their individual holding cells. Of course, since we were their spouses, we could get off at the next port with them, but we chose not to. We weren't lonely, though. Before they were kicked off, we gave them their luggage and passports. They were absolutely miserable. AP was just mad and walked off without so much as a goodbye to his betrayed wife, and gave no indication that he intended to stay with my wife, either. My wife was on her knees, holding onto my legs. She hated traveling, which is why we weren't on a road trip. Now she had to figure out how to get back, which could include a plane flight, her worst phobia. She got home a month after me. She had sunburn and said she had to do questionable things to get back. Now she owes her uncle $400 as well. I said she was welcome to get her pile of belongings out of my yard. I pulled off a tarp, covering all her things that I pulled out of the house. I told her she was lucky I didn't sell it all. She couldn't believe I still went through with the divorce, so I told her this was her reality check. She was not expecting to lose me on our 11th wedding anniversary, but maybe that's because she didn't think through what might happen and what she might deserve.